Okay, so this is part 2 to our discussion on an interesting topic. Just as an introduction, because I'm videoing this, and people get upset about this topic. So I'm going to say what I started last class. This is not a principle of our faith, meaning you don't have to believe this. Right? We are 13 fundamental principles of Judaism, which we're going to learn together, the Yud Gilgul Ikrim. This is not one of them. If you want to believe it, fine. You don't want to, no problem. The Rambam does talk about it. Some of the Gaonim were against it. But the Chachamim speak about it. And this is of reincarnation. And what's the idea? The idea of gilgul neshamot is that a soul leaves this body, goes up to Shemayim, and then for some reason comes back down again, the same neshama, whatever that means, and is put into another body. Okay? We'll see that this can happen once, it can happen 20 times. According to the sources over here, it could happen a bunch of times to the same person. Someone came up to me after last class and said, but tell me, do you actually believe in this? Do you actually believe in this reincarnation thing? Actually, put your hands up here. We have about 45 people here. Hands up if you actually believe in this. Hands up if you don't. Ashkenazi? Yeah, Ashkenazi? Yeah. Okay. It's really as simple as that. That's okay, no problem. You don't have to. And those who are not so sure, did we mention... I had a conversation with someone, maybe it was after class, which I wanted to mention last class, but I'll mention it now. There are those, including the Sfas Emes, because obviously Hasidus and Hasidim follow the more Kabbalistic interpretations, like Lubavitch and all the others. So they obviously, they do hold by the idea of Gilgul Neshamot. They say something fascinating. There's a question where this becomes the answer. So even if you don't believe in it, it's no problem, just follow along and put this in your final, you'll be okay. There's a question of what happened to all these souls that Abraham... Oh, it was you!
Oh, yeah.
That's right, it was you. Was that Sarah? Thank you. I feel good. I wasn't listening to what you were talking about. It was you, right? So what happens to all the converts, right? Well, how about them? Where do they come from? So the Sfas Emes brings down, I can't remember what it's based upon, obviously, of Chazals, and talks about Avram Avinu and Sarah Imenu had lots of students. We know that. The Torah itself tells us that there's people that came to them and they had a home that was open, and they would make meals for all of the wayward travelers, and their tent was open on all 4 sides, just like a chuppah. No, a sukkah is not open on all. If the sukkah is open on all 4 sides, it ain't a sukkah. No, a chuppah is open on all 4 sides. Why? To emulate the home of Avraham Avinu and Sarah Imenu. That's what they did, and they traveled. That's why they lived in a tent. They were actually very, very wealthy. They could have actually built a rudimentary house, right? They could have made a stone home, but they did live in a tent. Why? So they could travel from place to place in order to attract people to monotheism, ethical monotheism. Okay. The question is, very famous, it's not my question, it's a very famous question, where did all of those students go? All the nefashot that they created, where did they go? Did they become Jewish? No, they didn't become Jewish. Who became Jewish? The children of Avraham Avinu through Yitzchak and Yaakov. So where do they go? All these thousands of people, Avraham Avinu is going out there, he's preaching with his wife, right? He becomes a Kiruv movement. He's doing Jewish outreach in the desert, right? He's on his camel with pictures of the Rebbe on the side, you know, and he's out there bringing Jews in, he's feeding them and teaching them brachas, and there's only one God, and don't sacrifice your children to God, don't get involved in Avodah Zarah. Where are they? So one interpretation is that they went back to wherever they went to, and the idea of monotheism spread because of these people. The fact that you have monotheists around the world, ethical monotheists, stems from Avraham Avinu, and most people out there do train their, spiritual lineage or heritage to Avram and Sarah. There's another interpretation which fits into this topic, so I must mention it because it does appear there. And it says, you know what? These souls came back. They came back. They were reincarnated. And check this out, this is amazing. They actually were at Har Sinai. Why? Listen well. You see, at Har Sinai, we know the Gemara, you've all heard this before, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu went to the other nations and said to them, do you want the Torah? And what do they say? Makasiv be, what's in it? Remember this? And Hashem said, well, it says you can't steal. And they're like, no, we're from the stealers. We're not interested. And it was another nation, right? The Moabites said, you Shmael, and the Moabites said, do you want the Torah? And they're like, what's in it? It says you can't have adultery. I don't think so. Thanks for the offer. And then he went from nation to nation. Eventually went to the Jewish people and says, you want the Torah? And what do they say? Na'aseh v'nishma. So those famous and important words in the entire Torah will do, and then we'll listen to what's in it. Na'aseh v'nishma. So there's a big question. Were there any individuals in those non-Jewish nations that actually did want the Torah? And the answer is, yeah. There probably were. But how come they weren't accepted? Because their nations are like a democracy. Hashem said, no problem. I'll give you a chance, and I will reincarnate you into later generations, and that's where converts come from. Converts come from those. Where do these people come along? They would turn around and say, yeah, I'm interested in this whole Torah thing. Right? They're like, yeah, we want. Everyone's like, no. So you don't get. So those were the souls, those original people who actually were involved with Avraham Avinu and Sarah Meinu and were fed by Sarah Meinu. Because you know that what happened after Sarah had a baby, Yitzchak, people said, come on, that's Avram's kid. And she says, I'm able to nurse. I'll prove it to you. And they brought lots of babies. They said the children, the babies that drank from the milk of Sarah Meinu eventually came back in later generations. So the fact you have a convert who would actually choose to be Jewish for whatever reason, which, to be honest with you, I've never figured out. And if you ask most converts, and I've been involved with them actually on Thursday, or Tuesday, in 2 days' time, one of my students will be converting, not from here, from elsewhere. Very interesting individual. And ask most of them, and I'll be there. He actually wrote to me an email and said, Rabbi, will you join me in the mikveh? He said, not actually for the mikveh, but will you actually just like be around while I'm at this? Right? Very sweet guy. So you ask most converts, most of them, and say, tell me, why did you convert? They never come, well, kosher. I just had to keep kosher. Right? They never have like a rational reason. They're like, I just felt I had to be Jewish. I've never had, even one of my rabbis was a convert. And he's a very smart man, but never actually give you like a rational explanation. It's like a soul thing. According to this interpretation, it goes back, right? It's something embedded in them that allows them to reincarnate and come later. Actually, as a side point, I must mention this. It's not really related to it, but it is interesting, and will apply with Mashiach discussion. He then goes on to say, I'll get your question in 1 second. He then goes on to say, that's why we have galut. Why were the Jews exiled over the entire world? We'll see when Mashiach comes, one of the signs of Mashiach, he's going to gather together all the Jews from around the world and bring them back to Eretz Yisrael. Why did Hashem have to spread us out? Ready for this answer? This is a wild answer. I hope you appreciate how crazy this answer is. He says, because those converts who exist in Russia and France, for some reason have to be placed all around the world, right in China and Afghanistan, all this, probably not today, but all over the world, yeah? Why? So that the Jews could be there. Because if we're not there, we couldn't attract them. So one of the reasons that we were put into Galut in the first place was to allow what you refer to as the Nitzot, the sparks of these holy souls that to join the Jewish people, right? If everyone was in Israel, then the souls in China, Russia, or wherever couldn't be attracted to our people. Sfas Emes brings it down, but it's mentioned elsewhere. I saw it there, but it's mentioned elsewhere. Isn't that wild? That's crazy. The reason we're kicked out is that we could become like attraction for the Goyim who want to become Jewish. Am I the only one who found that crazy? Is that wild? No, okay, never mind. Yes.
What were you saying that you said, like, new converts today are people, something about that?
So I said, you see a comment today, they were the souls, actually Har Sinai, who said, yeah, we like to be Jewish, right? But Hashem said, no, it goes by nation, right? The nations say, no, that it's no for you too. Right? But said, no problem. But where do they get it from? It's they were the original souls that Avraham Avinu, Sarah Meinu, had to come back. I thought it was interesting. Okay, let's look inside the sources. This is the Rishis Chachma. And we're back into the why do we need to reincarnate. Now we looked at last class, we looked at the 3 explanations of the Arizal in the introduction, Shara Gilgulim, and he says, why do we have reincarnation? He says 3 reasons. Reason number 1 is mistakes from a past life. Reason number 2 is you didn't get a chance to do mitzvot in a past life. You have to get this mitzvot for whatever reason you weren't able to do it. Reason number 3 was you actually don't need it, but someone needs you. Right? Your husband needs you for some reason to perfect him. You can tell him this. And the Hashem brought him back. You're perfect. Your Nashor was good. You finished your tikkun, last lifetime. You were perfect. By the way, I wasn't. I'm here to mix something up, fix something up, because I'm a complete mess. Right? But for the rest of the people out there, so that's his 3 reasons. They have to help someone else achieve spiritual perfection. Okay? Either way, even if you're reason number 3, which you don't know, obviously. My wife does, but that's another discussion. She doesn't know that, right? And she's Ashkenazi, by the way. But she's in Brooklyn, so it's different. Over Inyan Lami Stera Gilgul Neshama says the Rishis Chachma. Why do we need it in the Shara Yira? Number 13. Why do we need it? Achashu be'inyan nitara begehenim. Why? Here's a question. This is this interesting question. Why do we need reincarnation if you have Gehenna? Like, whatever Gehenna is, we'll get there, God willing. Well, hopefully we won't get there, but we'll get to discuss it. But if you have this thing called Gehenna, Gehenna purifies us. Right? When the neshama goes into Gan Eden, before it gets there, those who need it go through Gehenna. So if that's true, why do they have to come back into this world? That's the question of the Rishis Chachma. Great question, right? Tirutz, he gives an answer. Actually, it's not his. Mori alav shalom, his rabbi, and the rabbi of the Rishis Chachma of was the Ramak, Rav Moshe Cordovero. He says, this is the answer I got from my rabbi when I asked him this question. So even he didn't know the answer. He says, Hagilgul hu the shtei sibot. They see there's two reasons why a soul will be reincarnated in this world. Ha'achas, one, lechesaron mitzvah, because they were lacking a certain mitzvah, shelo hishlim, that they didn't complete. V'tzarech, and therefore, lachzor lahashlim karoi, they have to come back and fix up that commandment because they didn't do it properly. Ulezeh, and that's right, murach lehitgalel, that's why we have to come back into and being reincarnated. Ki ein gehenim ela tahara. Gehenim doesn't give you a mitzvah, it just gets rid of the schmutz. It gets rid of the stuff you shouldn't have done. It doesn't give you mitzvah, right? It's the washing machine, right? You're on the spin cycle. It's going to purify you. Oh, if that's true, Gehenna can get rid of the bad stuff, but it can't give you the good stuff. And therefore, he says, and that's the answer of the Rav Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak. These are the big people. Yeah, says that's why a soul has to come back in order to get mitzvot they didn't get before. Right? So it's material, it purifies you. Levad, aval lo hashel chazul. It doesn't help you fix something you didn't do that you should have done. That's what he says. Okay. Va'od, and also, ki efshar sheyavol atakin l'tayar mash efshar legehenim l'tayar. There's some things which are so bad or whatever that Gehenna can't even purify them. Right? I don't know what they are, and I don't know what they are. But he says, therefore, v'hu yesh she'efshar legehenim l'tayar, v'hu ki yesh avonot shegehenim mitar, v'yesh she'ein gehenim mitar. For some reason, Gehenna cannot get everything. Muchrachol lavol lahashlim. It's got to come back and fix it. Right? Says the Zohar. As long as a person is not successful in this world, right? A person is uprooted and planted over and over again. Right? So you come back a number of times in order to fill something up. And the Chovetz Chaim said very famously once that it could be a person was wealthy, didn't give tzedakah, and has to come back as a poor person, so they understand what a poor person goes through when they won't give him tzedakah.
I have a question. Does the person die after they fulfill their mission? Or could you fulfill your mission and still be alive?
Well, that's a good question. Seemingly yes, but look at number 3 is a person could, according to the Arizal, a person could help other people do their mission, right? And they're still given a chance to do more mitzvot, right? It's not like, but it's possible a person fulfills their mission. There is, I've never seen it inside, but I've heard that they say you have a limited amount of words to say. I've probably overrun that by about 5 million at this point in my life, right? And then you die. So yeah, you're here for a certain mission. You finish your mission, it ends, and that's it. But it's not like, oh, that's it, you're out of here. People are given a chance to build up zchuyot. That's a great merit of Hashem. He gives us a chance to be in this world, which is why life and the existence of life is so precious. We're not end life or shorten life. Every moment in this world, and we said even a baby or a fetus, we even someone in a coma, we don't pull the blood, because every moment of life in this world is precious and is a tikkun on the neshama. Even as a fetus, yeah.
Do you get to choose if you want to go to Gehenna? Is it a choice?
I don't know. I don't think anyone will be choosing that. Yeah, I don't think so. I'll take a bite. Give me the easy pass. I don't know. I know the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, right, Al koch ados, against your will you are formed. Al koch nola, against your will you are born. Al koch chai, against your will you live. Al koch meit, against your will you die. Al koch, against your will you have to give din v'cheshbon l'fnei melech al malchim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God. So seemingly we seem to be pushed in here. We don't want to come to this world for sure. I don't think a person wants to go to Gehenna, but we'll see later on. One source I brought down that it's also a chesed. Even Gehenna, although I don't think about it, but it's also a chesed that Hashem does for us. That Hashem allows us to wipe away sins that we did. Yeah.
If someone dies, does that mean that they completed their path?
That's what Mina just asked me, and the answer is I don't know. It could be a person dies and doesn't fulfill their tafkid, right? Has to be Batar and Gehenna and come back to this world. We know people from the Torah didn't. Esav did not fulfill his tafkid, into teshuva at the end. Many people in history who we know didn't fulfill their tafkid. He was meant to marry Leah, and he had a whole life set up for him, and he chose not to. Can a person neglect their mission and forfeit them? Yeah, that's why we have free will. Has to be. Otherwise, there's no free will. If everyone's guaranteed to complete their mission, then Shalom Al Yisrael. It's not true. So, assuming this is a favor, yeah. I don't know if it falls into this. Maybe it does. Karet is spiritual excision. A person is cut off, and you can do teshuva for karet. Right? You get karet for eating on Yom Kippur, or being bold with a nida, having relations with a nida, or eating chametz on Pesach. So a person do teshuva for it. So if a person dies with sins, seemingly. You have to understand what karet means. Some say karet means holech ariri. The person goes, they lose children, right? Or they're not able to have children, right? It affects the next generation. That's what karet can mean. Karet means according to the Balatanya, they cut off on those top 2 levels of the neshama. Does that mean they don't go to Gan Eden? I don't know. You have to ask someone who knows more about the stuff than I do. I don't know. Yeah.
Let's say someone's in a coma, but before the coma prior, let's just assume that they were given like a terminal illness. Would you assume that like the person who's in charge of like power of attorney would still decide to keep them alive? Because are you saying that like even if you know they're going to die in X amount of time?
Yeah. And the answer to that is you don't kill people. Maybe not have to put them on life support, right, but this is a big area Jewish life. But once they're on, you cannot do that.
Right.
Now, why? And the answer stems from this, because life is precious. Just being in this world is somehow fixing up the soul of a person, just existing, just living itself in Olam Hazeh. That's why we're so against, blowing ourselves up for God. I don't want to die for God. We want to live for God. Dying for God's easy. Just blow yourself up.
Someone who's in a coma, like, they don't have like any function.
I know, but then a shaman is still in this world. I know, even if they're completely that's a beautiful thing for us. We see even a person who's got complete disabilities, they're useless on society, a drain, go stick them, go throw them away, right? Go kill them like the Nazis did, right? Or stick them in a jar and let them freeze to death as babies, right? As they do in many cultures. That's not us. That's not us. Let's see the Sefer Bahir. And he says, thus we understand one of the famous questions in Jewish history, why all theologians struggle with this, and he brings down, this is a popular answer. Why do we have tzaddik v'ralo? Right? V'rasha v'tovlo. That's famous. Why do we have a rasha? It could be in a previous, now we don't say this, but it could be in a past life, this person did something and had to come back in order to expiate it. Okay? And he says, this is like a mashal. He gives an analogy. They love giving agricultural analogies. Mashal. A person plants kerem, a vine, begino in his garden, right? Because he wants to make grapes, right? It didn't work. What does he do? He's got to rip it out and replant, right? If it comes out, great. If not, rip it out and replant many, many times. That's what he says. That's what he says. And even the Ramchal talks about it. Look at this, bottom of page 24. Va'od, shurish acher is another important principle. Nimsa lenagat b'neinei olam hazeh. Something else you should know about olam hazeh, he says. Vahu, top of page 25. Shachachma liona God, right? The greatest wisdom. Sidra laharbot od hatzlacha, right? Wants to give you the most chance of reaching perfection and salvation. Sheneshama acha tavol olam hazeh. One soul comes to this world. Pamim shonos, many times, begufim shonim, in different bodies. This neshama is able to fix, but pam achat that which they messed up in a previous lifetime. Right? The body's not the same, but the soul comes back. Or to complete that which you didn't complete. Right? He follows this 2-principle method. V'hinei, prate b'chinot rabot yimsu binyan zeh shel gilgul. There's many details in this concept of gilgul, of reincarnation. How he's judged in one incarnation, right? How he comes out another reincarnation. It's all. He says, we can't understand this. Only Hashem can decide, because who knows, you're in that place, in that body, in 1 century, come back another time. He says, all of this is only a Kadosh Baruch Hu can do this. Everything is according to the true judgment. He says, Kadosh Baruch Hu is fair, he's Yashar, he's Hashem is Emet. V'al kol ze ne'emar, hatzur tamim palo, as it says in Dvarim, right? Hashem is perfect, right? Kol derachav mishpat. He's saying this pasuk is proof to us, whatever Hashem does is right. He does what's best for us. If he says you have to come back in this place, this time, and this way, it's because he loves us and says this is going to help us. Okay, Hashem is perfect. Hashem is, if it was us, we'd mess up. But it's not us, thank God. Right? Ve'em brim yediyah, and no greater thing can encompass yediyah shetuchal lechalot machshvato b'sprach shema v'omet sato. And the depth, no one can understand God, and the depth of his thought, you can't figure it out. Racha klal hazeh. You should know that this is the general principle, yadanu kachol shar klalim, which is the general principle. Shachsham and Mikoros Makreim Shel Bnei Adam B'Olam Hazeh. We know that, like other concepts, the principle of reincarnation is one of man's experiences. Who gilgul al pi otam achukim mishpatim esham shechukul lifnei Hakadosh Baruch Hu ze'inyan kolon. That's basically it. Hashem knows what's best for us. He understands who needs to come back when, where to fix what. Hashem knows what He's doing, and that's the end of it. So the Sefer Haredim has a very interesting question. Is a soul aware of its reincarnated state? Right? Is a person aware of it? So the Sefer Haredim says, V'da, bottom page 25, V'da, Shamu Kabbalim, that the Kabbalists say, right, that's basically where this information is coming from, Shi'af al pi shemis galgal adam b'tzurat adam, even though a soul is reincarnated in a human body, it is unaware, any yodeh b'gilgul rishon is unaware of initial incarnation. Mikol makom, nevertheless. This is the scary part. Shemisgalgal b'surat behema, let's he comes back as an animal, chaya, or oaf, or a bird, right? Or whatever. Hu yodeh b'gilgul rishon, he is aware, or she is aware of it. And actually is troubled that he was a person in a previous lifetime and now has to come back as an animal. Scary, right? They say that the souls of holy people come back as fish, right? So they get eaten on Shabbat. They say the Arizal would only meet on Shabbat, because he felt only on the power of the Kedusha of Shabbat, he was able to take the life force somehow inside that animal and lift it up, right, through the Suda of Shabbat, or the Chagim. That's what they say.
Why was he happy about it? Then if it's saying it's not blood.
You know, he said, the Arizal, he said when he ate the animal, right, he would only do it on Shabbat, because he could lift up the Shabbat, but the actual person himself is not so much. You want to do it now? You want the Paleotes? You want to see the list? Yeah.
So
If this is too much to handle, Dean, you let me know. You're only half Sephardi. I understand what you're saying, all right?
So he said your soul isn't aware you're reincarnated
No.
as a human, but not.
But as an animal, the animal would be aware of it.
Why? An animal, not.
Ich weiß nicht.
I mean the neshama.
The neshama of the idea, but the animal knows it. He knows he's.
So why have we never met anyone who thinks they're reincarnated? Or I've never met anyone who said they're reincarnated.
Oh, that's exactly what he said. He says that a human is not aware of
Or
previous
not
incarnations.
an animal?
Someone gave me a tape years ago, one of my rabbis, Rabbi Tauber, who's very into this topic. He had a tape which he played in class. Tapes, there were little plastic boxes with a spool inside it. And this was of, there's the whole thing, I'm not saying it's true, but of hypnotic regression, past life regressions. You know this? They do this hypnosis thing. I'd already been hypnotized before, like properly hypnotized, not like on stage, but like a real hypnosis. Anyone done that before? I have. It's very freaky. Very freaky experience. So they were recording some. It was in French, but they were recording this woman being hypnotized by a psychiatrist in France who was Jewish, a secular guy, and he was talking to her in French, and suddenly she starts speaking in English about a previous life. That she lived in a place called Matlock. I don't know why I remember that. I'd never heard of the place before, and I'm from England. And she went back and she was killed. She explains how she was killed and whole discussion. And I think the funny thing was she didn't actually speak English. Something like that. What did happen though is that from this, what I do know is the psychiatrist from this became an observant Jew. Came from after this experience. We started to explore Judaism because of this.
A lot of people think they're like gilgul among people from the Shoah.
Yeah, there's a whole book on this, written by, I don't know if the guy's Jewish, if he's not an observant Jew, but he has a whole thing that today, my wife says she is. My wife is convinced she is. Right, he's safe from that. Could be, we can't prove it. Okay, you want to do the Pele Yoetz? It's a big book. This is Rav Papo. He was from Turkey.
What page are we on?
We're not. And we're not a gilgul hu ta'oret adam. It says this topic of gilgul wakes people up. L'ten leiv lira, that gives them fear. Et Hashem of God. Yirat ha'onesh ki yiten el libo. It's going to give to your heart. Rabim mechovim l'rasha. It comes and gives you mar ma'od mavet. It's really more scary than thinking about Gehenna. She's called on nafsho b'dumat so because the person come back as it's so mechaim and daber, come back in different ways. Umar ra'ayah sal gegulim and mishonim come back as different creatures. For example, he says a person can come back. Here we go. 1 second. Even those things which seem light to us, gone. Amidaber lashon hara. Person speaks lashon hara, comes back as a dog. Right? And he proves it out from the similar lashon hara as lamed hey, and there's a whole thing on that. Hamistakal be'arai, people who look at inappropriate things. Gilgul oaf comes back as a bird. 1 second. He says, Varava Arizal, Ra Pamachat, the Arizal once saw Nefesh Chasid, the soul of a person, Echad, which is Galgal Ba'az, came back as a goat. He was able to look at a goat and knew who the original soul was. Yeah?
We said that like animals, their nefesh is good about it.
Right. Well, these aren't animals, that's what he's trying to say. This is the soul of a human.
So if the soul is reincarnated into, let's say...
Yeah, then that soul's the, yeah, of course, that's the, yeah, that's,
that soul will go
yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. That's what he's saying.
So,
Again, I'm not saying I believe it, I'm just telling you what it says over here. This is the Peleo, it's a big sefer.
so like,
And he gives the reason why he came back as a goat, which I'm not going to tell you. But the Gehenna Harbe Minim Gilgulim B'Vav B'Sefer Kol, and the rabbis and the Kabbalah speak about this. Different creatures that come back as. 1 second, let's go to English, it's taking me too long. 1 second, there's a whole list over here, wait a minute. It says some people, if you act with brazenness, you come back as a plant, you come back as a wild animal, a bird, a kosher, even a non-kosher fish or insect. Even though he has no recollection of his former self when he's reincarnated in human form, in the inanimate plant or animal form, he agrees with this. He remembers he was a great prince, and he sees the tremendous busha that comes with this, the embarrassment of doing this. Okay, that's enough. I can't do this anymore. Yeah.
so he thinks that there's like animals that have human souls. And
Yes.
animals that have animals.
Yes.
And
Your
then if
pet
you,
dog,
like,
which you're
have a
convinced,
dog,
right,
like,
could actually be your great grandmother. I'm only kidding. Don't be
But
offended.
it might just be like a human soul, but that's...
But then again, not. Yeah, I told you the famous story of the cat who had listened to Kaddish being said, and someone said, "Is that cat a reincarnation of someone in my family?" Hear me say Kaddish, says maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just a cat. Who knows? Maybe there's great people out there who know it. Oh, there was a great story I read. Oh, I actually told this about the Nadvorna Rebbe, and this story was told by one of his workers. He's, his gabbai, and he said that the Nadvorna Rebbe was a big study, was studying Torah all day, was sitting in his study, and he heard the circus was coming to town, and he said to his servant, "I want to go to visit the circus." The holy Rebbe wants to go see the circus that's come to town. He says, "Yes." So the story goes to the story. The story goes that he's like, "You sure, Rebbe?" He thought maybe something had happened to the Rebbe. He goes, "I want to go to the circus." Often the Voda Rebbe goes, and he was a lifer. Actually, he says in this book that whoever meets a lifer should tell him the story. And I once told this to one of my students that was a lifer, I met her the next day. And I told her the story, and she freaked out because said, "Whoever is a descendant of the Nadvorno Rebbe, comes to the Leifer family, should hear how great their great-great-grandancestor was. Anyway, so he wants to go to the circus. So he goes down, he goes to the circus. And in the circus there was a dancing bear. And a gypsy lady had this bear, had a ring through its nose, and she was schlepping this bear around. And he goes up and he says, I'd like to buy your bear. And the guy's like, now the Rebbe's definitely not crazy. The Rebbe wants to buy a bear? He wants to buy a dance. What's he going to do with an old dancing bear? So he goes, how much do you want for it? She says, I don't know, 3 kopecks, 3 rubles, whatever it was. So he pays this woman, the owner of the dancing bear, and he gives them, and he's holding on to this rope of this dancing bear, the Rebbe, this old Rebbe. And the guy's like, he's gone nuts. He's gone completely crazy. And then the lady leaves, circus leaves town, and he says, if I wouldn't have seen this myself, I would never have believed it. He leaned over and he whispered into the ear of the bear, Moishi, you can stop dancing now. And the bear dropped dead. And that was it. I read the story. He goes, if I had not seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. Story of the Nadvorno Rebbe, the dancing bear. Isn't that crazy? Okay. Says the Mishnah Brura, halfway down page 26. Oh, do we do the Arizal on top? Do we do the Arizal? 1 second. Hold on to Acha Petira. A person dies. By the way, why is death called a Petira? Niftar. Why is it correct? Because they're patur from Mitzvot. Right. It says Acha Petira Adam Nifram Menu Al Chat. A person is punished for their sins. Kodem Shigas Hu Begehenim. Right before they go to Gehenim, Baharba Mitziot Shel Onish, but Kuram Nikram Gilgulim, and they go to a thing called Gilgulim, says Yarizal. Rasulullah, Kis Galal or Bedomim come back as a domem, an inanimate object, or Betsemach, or a plant, or Bachai, or Medaber, or as a human. Right? Humans, we said, are called Medaber. We're the creatures that speak. So humans are referred to as Medabers. The Kiman Rov B'nei Adam, and most people, Loyim Latum Gilgulim Ma'ila. Most humans don't get away with it. Most have to come back. Right? Most of you have been here before. Especially this section over here. I'm just saying, this group over here, there's no question of being here before. You've been here. It's not your first time, Dina. You've been here before. He says, V'amnam kefi erech et adam. Everything according to what the person did. Right? Kach b'chinet ofni gilgula or b'tzemach, and everything. Hashem knows exactly what he's doing. Says the Mishnah Brura in Sharat Zion, 622, Ki Adam Choshev Kama Pamim, and a person thinks, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to correct my faults? I keep making the same mistakes, doing it again and again and again, right? And he says that Hashem decrees if he dies, right? What am I going to do about it? He says, Hashem says, I'm going to die. Aval Tautu, you're making a mistake. If that's what you think, you're making a mistake. You come back a bunch of times to fix it. That's the Chavetz Chaim. Wowzers. Mamma mia. And the Arizal says something fascinating. This is fascinating. He says, you'll see in the Gemara many times that a certain sage was obsessed with a mitzvah. This happens many times in the Gemara, like all the time. One was very, very careful when it came to the Shabbos lights. One was very careful with Kovod Shabbos. One was very into treating tefillin with great respect. So he asked the question, he goes, why do they pick out these rabbis, these great Tanaim and Amoraim, and say that this was their mitzvah? Why do we do such a thing? He said they loved all mitzvahs. Right? Be like a good yeshiva or seminary rebbe. Say, oh, they loved all forms of mitzvot. But he says, no. He says, these people were experts in this one mitzvah. When it comes to Kovod Shabbos, and look at Pirkei Avos. What is Pirkei Avot? Right? Hillel, Oimer, Rabbi Kiva. Right? It's always the same, saying one thing. Haya Oimer used to say. What do you mean used to say? You say lots of stuff. So they say, what that means is, this is what they lived by. This was their motto that they lived by. Right? Why do they pick one statement? Because that was their statement. Everyone has one statement, right, that they live by. This was their life mission. That's what it means. That's what they say. They said a lot of stuff. But Haya Omer means they would say it again and again. Kol Davrach Malatav Avid, Rabbi Kiva used to say, right? Nachashim's Gamzu used to say, right? Everyone used to say one thing. Right? Hakol Latov. Right? They would say one thing, or there'd be one mitzvah. So you'd think, well, that's what they loved. So he gives a novel interpretation and says, I tell you, actually, what this is connected to. This is Al Pi Kabbalah. The Arizal says, Uvezeid baralach, machem etzir betal. We see many times in the Gemara, ki chacham ploni, one chacham, hayazar b'mitzvah prata, one very particular mitzvah. Very, very careful. There's one, this is my mitzvah. Right? Suda, Purim, whatever it is. This one, I do it really, really well. Yotem Mishah Mitzvot. You have one rabbi who's very into tzedakah. And you meet such people today. Right? They're very into one mitzvah. One wants to give charity to Kiruv. Right? One wants to bring Shabbat to the masses. Now they do all the mitzvah, but they focus and they make one mitzvah. Whoop! That's my mitzvah. He's Mr. These rabbis in Israel who are experts in Hachanasat Orchim. Right? Look at Rav Machalis, for example. Massive tzaddik, right? Guests every Shabbos, hundreds of guests coming to his home. Right? That's his. He does all the other mitzvah, but that becomes his muhus. That becomes his essence. So he says this goes back. There's a tradition of this where you pick one mitzvah and that becomes your mitzvah. You own it. You own that mitzvah. So he says, or one other rabbi would become an expert in another mitzvah. Right? He says that you find one or more asks his fellow, what was your father careful in? What was your father into? Right? Your avucha, your father, what was he into? And his friend would say, tzitzis, or tefillin, or something like that. That was their mitzvah. Who was it who between meat and milk waited 24 hours? Right? It's one of his fathers. Who was that? We mentioned it in our class. Who was that? He says, my father was like wine, I'm like vinegar, only wait 6 hours. My father was like, he's like wine, he used to wait 24 hours. That was his thing. Well, that's it. That's his one thing. He used to wait a long time between meat and milk. Okay, shkoyach. Okay, wait, no. He's saying, no. Aval sod, there's a secret over here. This is fascinating. Ki kol chacham v'chacham hayazar ba'ota mitzvah shayta chasirim and v'gula kodem. They were basically focusing on a mitzvah they weren't that good of the life before. That's what it is. They pick a mitzvah. The mitzvah you have a natural leaning towards is your mitzvah. And the Rambam actually says this, not for this reason, but for other reasons. You choose that one mitzvah, that becomes your mitzvah, you become an expert in it. You become an expert in Birchas Hamazon. Expert in charity, if Hashem blesses you with riches. Expert in, tzniut, right? You make seminars and do classes. Right? Become an expert in the area of Torah. That becomes your thing. He's saying that it doesn't mean you can't do the other stuff, but that shows you whatever you lean towards is your life mission. What he's saying is that's actually proof that in a past life maybe you were missing over here. You came back to fulfill it. Isn't that interesting? It's fascinating. Yes.
Does Hashem try to make us into one mitzvah so that we can fulfill what we missed in the previous life, or just the soul?
No. He gives you the natural inclination. Hashem will give you the equipment to do it. He gives you the netiyah, right? Or klal proper, but it could be a very specific thing. He says, right? Or a person gets very careful. I'm not going to speak lashon hara, right? I'm not going to be jealous, right? It's a good thing to do. You pick one. It's like a college. You start with all the courses, right? And then by the end you specialize. Such a thing. You take one thing and that becomes your speciality. Or I'm very careful of this particular thing. Right? Pick a certain trait. And he says all of this, according to the Arizal anyway, is according to your past incarnation. Right? And that's what the Vilna Gaon says. We mentioned this last class. Let's see it inside page 27. Jump down to note 1 on page 27. And he says, this is the Vilna Gaon and Evan Shlema. A person was a bad person in their first incarnation. Brings him down at the time of the waning of the moon, whatever that means. He lives a life of poverty. If there's a righteous person now, he says, that's one of the reasons why righteous people suffer in this world. They're fixing junk from last life. And that's why it says in the Gemara, he says, a righteous person from length of life, number of children, extent of one's possessions, don't depend on your merit, but on your mazal. Everything you have in this world is your mazal. Your mazal is based upon, right, where Kadosh Baruch Hu has you. Mazal doesn't mean luck, right? Mazal means where you were in a previous life, right? And how Kadosh Baruch Hu brings you back to this world. A person can have great mathematical ability. That means they have to fix up something to do with that, right? They have great midot. There's something, your tough kid involves that. You're given a tremendous amount of wealth. You inherit billions of dollars. Whatever it is, millions of dollars, 10,000, whatever it is. Hashem knows, He's giving it to you. It's all to fix up bad stuff. Yeah.
I don't understand how a soul being reincarnated as an animal can help perfect their mission or perfect.
That's a
their
good question.
soul.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I think just it being in that form, the humiliation it goes through. We know that the Chazal speak about it. Actually, the Peliot says about elsewhere. Being humiliated in this world is one of the great things. If you knew just being humiliated, what it does to your soul, it's machnia you, it gives you humility, right? If you have to, someone insults you, having great on your neshama. You should walk around saying, diss me. Right? Just go around saying, please, or don't do that. Right? But if a person goes around and they feel it, it's good for their neshama. That, just the experience of being, even in the form, just being, that's why Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael. He just, let me come back as a flower just to be in Eretz Yisrael. Just to live in another form, just let me be there. Right? It affects how? I don't know. Hey, we'll finish up with this one. Time's it. Okay, I'm done. I'm reincarnated now. We'll do this last one. It says these are the mishpatim, the ordinances you set before them. It says in Shemot, Chaf Aleph Aleph 21, right? And this says Rav Moshe Ephraim Surikov, the Degel Machane Ephraim, right? Says, I'll tell you what this is about. Check this out. This is amazing. He says we know there are cycles of gilgul, of reincarnation, and he says there's a surprising connection that you see. Tamur lachora ha b'pasuk mefarish v'azal denim emanos. That this mishpatim that we just read is all about monetary matters. These are the matters money matters, mishpatim, but the justice that we see over there discusses money matters. Why? He says, I'll give a full explanation. Right? Why does the Zohar connect reincarnation and money? You with me? It says, Me'ila mishpatim. He says, oh, that's also to do with reincarnation. What's the connection between money matters? And he says, I heard the following explanation. Let's say a person, by the way, even if you don't believe in reincarnation, it's a great idea to think about. Great thing to think about. He goes, let me get this. You have a person who's in court and accuses another person of owing him money. Now, the defendant knows he's innocent. He knows he's innocent. He is innocent. He doesn't owe him money. But now he's in court. Now, how does he feel? He's in court and he says, you owe me $1 million. Now, he knows he doesn't owe $1 million. He knows it in himself. But what happens? The court rules against him. So the defendant's lost, he's got to pay $1 million that he doesn't owe. How does he feel? Can't believe this. There's no justice in this world. I went to Beit Din, I'm innocent. He was innocent. Oh, $1 million. He goes, aha. Money matters. Let's plug it, says the Arizal. Reincarnation. He says, don't be plagued by this question. He says, we know the Torah says MS, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. Hashem knows the real account. Okay? But the Torah, i.e. the judges in the Torah court, have made him pay. So where's the truth? So I'll tell you. Ki b'vadai, undoubtedly, mistama hayachai b'gul havar. He obviously owed this money in a previous lifetime. Ish hadan, imo, uke'et chai b'tor Torah, and the Torah says you got to pay him for it. But he didn't do it in the past life. So what does Hashem do? He says, Hashem brings them both back, makes him owe the money. By the way, if you could just, this one point, believe, your life becomes amazing. Imagine going through life with this form of thinking. All the bad stuff that happens to you, which is unfair and unjust, say, you know what? It must be that not only is it good for my neshama, right? It's good for a person to go through suffering in this world. It's good for their neshama. Not that they choose it, but it's probably I owe us in a past life. And therefore, it's amazing. I've now corrected a debt, which I'm now not culpable for anymore. Hashem did me a favor, brought me back, and I've done it. right? Atamot b'mara who atid l'tenet adin. V'keil rabim b'nei dinim. And by the way, there's many examples. Right? You lose $5, someone picks it up. Who knows? Maybe in a past life, the other person $5, and you've now corrected that. All these tikkunim, all these fix-ups are happening, and it's with money, because that's what we mess up. Right? So the Arizal says, oh, ele mishpatim, that's mamanos, that's money, oh, that's gilgul. Right? Shates sifleihem. That's before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's before Hashem, because Hashem has decided who comes back and does what. That's what the Zohar alludes to when it says, ve'ela mishpatim. Shem dini mamanos. Afal pi, shemin hanira, if you just look at it, right? Hem neged ha'emet. It's against the truth. I don't own the money. Ulafam achta emet hu ilin sedurim de gulgula v'hainu abora kol. Right? Ubora kol neshamat yodea. God knows how to bring back these souls. Hashem creates these souls. Everything comes back. Right? Everything is true. Everything is perfect. It's Hashem's compassion to allow you to do that. Uminig al pi Torah et olama b'chesed u'berachem u'b'tzerga mishpat. This is proof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's. So Elim Mishpatim is Hashem does mishpat, bringing back souls to pay back money you owe in the past. And you can even say, the Mishnah Berurah mentions it about a child chas v'chalila that dies young, could have been a reincarnation of a great person. And you hear people say this. Not that you go to a person and says, oh, you lost your baby chas v'chalila in the past life they were great. You don't say it, but because it's an emotional feeling. This is a rational answer, maybe slightly irrational. But that's what the Mishnah Berurah says in Orach Chaim. It says it could be a person chas v'chalila loses it. It could be in a past life. This person was very great. They have to come back to this world for 1 year, 2 years, a week, a day, a fetus. And that's the famous story of the Chazon Ish, right? Rabbi Shah Karlitz, visited by a woman with Down syndrome kid, and she walked in and said, he stood up and said, it must be a righteous neshama. It must be that his child's Down syndrome with so little abilities and faculties must be dealing with a very holy soul of a previous life, and he stood up for him. Like other people to say, oh, these disabilities, they're a burden on society. For us, these are holy neshamot. That's what we're doing. We're not returning to this topic again. Excuse the pun. Questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, let's stop over there, I'm tired. We'll pick this up, God willing, and we'll begin Mashiach on Thursday. Our big topic starts on Thursday, Miss Hashem.